So in today's video stream, I guess this is a video if you're watching later, we'll be talking about Showkontrol, which is this handy little piece of software. Been using it for about the past year, and I'm by no means an expert in it, but I know enough about it to show you guys how I have it set up in my studio here so that we can use it with MA2. And yeah, it's been pretty fun to learn how to use it over the past year, and gotten to a point where it's pretty useful. Yeah, if you want to work on Nightbot, that'd be great. Right now, I just have the default settings where if people spam caps, then they get timed out. What's up, Dallas? What is up, Ukraine? Hey, France. From Iran. What's up, Cool Dude Tech Tips? Thanks for tuning in. All right, we have passed our 5-minute introductory mark, so we might as well get right into it. We'll talk a little bit about Showkontrol first, and then afterwards, I think it would be cool to talk about how I manage the different sources for like Madrix and actual values in MA and Resolume. Because we do have our virtual stage set up once again. We were using this for time coding last week, and we'll be using it for an example today. So yeah, I am also live on Twitch, which has a little bit quicker response time than over on YouTube. So if you are watching on the YouTubes, totally fine. You don't have to come over to Twitch, but I am streaming a little more often on Twitch now because it's just better. It's higher quality. There's no debating it. So with that said, let's hop over into Showkontrol, and we'll talk a little bit about this. Now, the Showkontrol window that you see over here, all the stuff around it, like the MA stuff down here and on the lower part, that's not a part of Showkontrol. That's just an overlay that I have set up on Twitch. So, or on the stream. Essentially, what Showkontrol is it is a translator, right? So it connects to the same network as the CDJs, plugs into the same network switch that all the CDJs are connected to, and you are able to translate one section, or like one song, you can translate that to a stripe of timecode, and it does it in real time. And I'll show you, I'll kind of walk you through the process of doing that. So first of all, let me get rid of, oh great, Showkontrol is crashing. Nope, we're good. So to start off, let's talk a little bit about what Showkontrol can do. You can output 2 layers of SMPTE. So there are input players and then output layers. Okay. So in a typical CDJ network, and you can see my little graphic down below me, has 4 players in it. We got 1, 2, 3, and 4. And you can see on the Showkontrol graphic, or on the Showkontrol screen capture, I have 4 sections down below, 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those player numbers are dictated by what is on the CDJ screen. So it doesn't matter where they're physically located, and this is kind of one of the important things about setting up CDJs, is when you're setting up CDJs, the standard setup is to have the mixer in the middle, and then have players 1 and 2 on the left side of the mixer, and then 3 and 4 on the right side of the mixer. It just makes it so everything just makes sense, okay? So those player numbers are reflected in the lower portion of the Showkontrol screen. So you can see we've got player 1 here, or deck 1 as it's called in Showkontrol, but technically in the network it's called player 1. Player 2 is here, and it has a track loaded. Player 3 and player 4. So these little windows down here are basically a preview of what is happening on any particular deck at any given time. So if I hit the Q button, for example, we can see that we are getting basically just a feedback of whatever the DJ is doing. So if you can see the DJ is queuing along, you can see that. If we go a little bit further into this view here, we have a gear icon where you can change preferences for anything that is loaded onto that deck. So this is important to note because this menu right here is not specific to the individual track that's loaded. It's specific to that particular deck. And these are just some Telnet commands that I have put in here. And actually, while I'm here, let me double check and make sure that I am getting Telnet commands coming through on MA. Let's see, so this would be under system and desk status. I don't think you'll see it. Yeah, so Telnet is a way of communicating with the MA command line without having a station plugged into it. So for some reason, Telnet is it's because the on PC that I'm using to record the screen 1 is a different IP address than what I'm logged into in Showkontrol. So if you were to look in my Telnet on the desk, we've got 1 logged in, which is Showkontrol. We'll talk a little bit about that in a minute. So let's hop back over to Showkontrol. And each one of these decks also has a assignment where you can choose between outputting SMPTE for that deck on layers A or B or both. If you were to assign both A and B to this deck, we would have timecode output on both A and B. But what does A and B mean? Well, you can output audio SMPTE over the actual headphone output jack. So if I were to remove this, because right now it's going into my timecode rack, but if I were to remove this, turn our volume up here, should get audio SMPTE out. 1 second here. Yeah, so there's our SMPTE coming out of the left speaker and then the right speaker, which sounds great, like robots fucking, as Colin Stenzel would say. So each one of these layers can output 1 stream of SMPTE because SMPTE is a mono signal, and in that headphone jack we have 2 outputs, right? We have a left and a right. So that left and right can be split up into different signals, which is a trick that some people use for splitting up mono audio into a timecode programming system, but that's a little different than what we're talking about in this video. That should be my alarm clock. Yeah, music to my ears. Yeah, it's great. It's a great noise. Screaming pig noise. That's a new one. I haven't heard that one before. So I'm going to go ahead and plug back in the cable that goes from my headphone jack, and it splits into 2 XLRs for the A and the B, and that goes into that timecode rack that we built in the other video. You guys remember that. Let me make sure that this is still... Oh, got to assign our A and B again. Okay, so it's coming out of A and B, but you'll notice that I'm only getting the left side. See that? That is because let me configure on PC. So in that timecode rack, we have 2 layers. We've got A and B coming in. So if I configure this properly, and I go over to the computer that is plugged in to our little adapter, our timecode rack. Oops. I can choose which MIDI device I want to listen to. And I want to listen to the MIF4. And then I want to go into Setup and make sure that my on PC station here, the laptop, is dumping MIDI timecode into slot 2. So now with any luck, we hop over to, yeah, here we go. So now we're getting both A and B into MA, okay? And our Telnet is working because you can see the little player indicator is showing up. Sorry guys if I'm not interacting with chat a whole lot. I want to get you guys this information, show you how it works, and then we'll take a few breaks here in about another 30 minutes. And then we can do some Q&A. So again, these are all connected over a local area network, and let's talk a little bit about how that is set up. So obviously we're separated by a pretty significant distance between front of house, where we're going to be running all of this stuff, and the DJ, who is going to be way far away. Okay, so between that network switch, which has all the CDJs connected to it, we still need to run a single Cat6 line or Cat5e or anything higher. We just need a gigabit connection. It needs to go from wherever the DJ is plugged in with their CDJs out to front of house. And then that line plugs into one of these guys. And I have a dedicated network card for this because this is the one thing that I actually physically separate when I'm running front of house lines. This gets its own separate dedicated line every time, just because it's nice to have it separated and have this on a separate network card that's not running through a VLAN, and it has its own full gigabit capacity to connect to the switch on stage. So this is a USB-C to gigabit network card, network interface card, NIC. And I assign this in macOS to be DHCP, so that we can plug in and it will automatically recognize CDJs on the network, give itself an IP address, and then start talking. You can technically do this as static, but I keep this as dynamic. You can see on here I've written dynamic, just so that we can connect a little more easily to any CDJ setup we run into. So that plugs in to the MacBook. And if I go into my network settings, we can go over to Pro DJ Link. Actually, let's just look at interfaces real quick. If I go into interfaces, and I'm using not the newest version of Showkontrol. There's one newer public beta version that's out, but this is the one that I'm using. I have a couple of network services on the left here. So there's a difference between the services in OS X and Mac OS, and there is a difference between these services, which can be assigned to the same physical network card. So this ArtNet and MANet network service, these services are actually connected to a second card. And this one is conveniently labeled very sloppily ArtNet. So this one has two static IPs assigned to it. One for ArtNet control, because MA only talks on the 2 dot or the 10 dot ArtNet ranges for IPs. And then it also has an MANet IP address, static IP, assigned to it. And they both live here at the same time, so I can communicate with both MANet and ArtNet for controlling Showkontrol, which we'll talk about in a second here, through one connection. So you don't have to have multiple network cards for all of your different IPs. Same thing on Windows. You can assign multiple IPs to the same card. Okay. The only other thing that I want to talk about is I do have these two separated. So we've got the Showkontrol and the static IPs, ArtNet and MA2 over here. I haven't found a way to combine these into one physical device, because it seems that Mac OS, and I'm not a Mac guy in general, but I use it for Showkontrol, and I've gotten a little experience with it. I don't think there's a way to assign both a DHCP and static IP on the same physical connector. At least there wasn't one. At least there wasn't a way that I could find. Every time I tried to do it, there would be disconnects and all sorts of weird behaviors. So you could either kind of choose one or the other. So static, dynamic, DHCP. So I'll plug these back in. We can see we have nothing connected. So let's just start with our Showkontrol connection, just for a second here. So I'll plug that in. I've got the nice little click. And Showkontrol is going to talk to the CDJs and devices that are connected here. Any moment now. There we go. So we got our blinking solid connection here, and once it goes solid, we should see, come on, come on, come on. Sometimes when you disconnect and reconnect network stuff, you'll have to restart framework. So we'll try that real quick. Showkontrol can get a little picky when you start disconnecting and reconnecting, and public beta version. Yeah, this is the one from mid-March of this year. And we'll go ahead and launch. And now we can see, yeah, it connects just fine. So we just have our Showkontrol adapter connected. And if we go over to our Pro DJ Link tab, we can see the devices that are connected. So I have a mixer, 900 Nexus 2, and a CDJ 2000 Nexus 2 connected. Right there, those two, CDJ and the mixer. This is player 3 because it is the first one immediately to, or sorry, this is player 2 because it's the first one immediately to the left. That one over there, which you can't see because it's cropped out, would be player 3. I don't have it turned on right now. I just have this CDJ and that CDJ for now. So we see those two populated in our link devices, and we can see that our interface has assigned itself an IP to communicate with those devices. So that's all good. Once we see that we have this blinking connection, and we can see that we have activity, and we've assigned our output layer, the only real other thing to worry about is assigning your offsets to all the different tracks in your set. So right now we can see we're seeing a 10-minute offset, and I can see that both in our title bar here above each deck. We can see that in our layer preview window here, and then we can also see that in one other place, that is the set list. So this set list is essentially just a list of offsets, right? It is a list of every track that you have added to Showkontrol's internal library. If you're just to load a random track from a CDJ, if it doesn't exist in this library, then Showkontrol won't know what offset to translate it to. And every song, usually depending on the programmer, but most songs in most systems have their own unique timecode stripe so that they don't accidentally fire the wrong track. It's just a way of separating it out and giving it a little bit of passive redundancy. So let's delete these tracks that I have in here. And this is what you would see if you were in live view, which is the view that if you're time coding with, you're going to be watching the whole time. This is going to be your default view for 90% of the time when you are time coding. There's also a viewer page. This is more for busking. If you want to, if you're not doing a time code show and you want to just pull up and see what the DJs are playing and what they have loaded up, and then the lower half of the screen will show you the different waveforms and where they are in the song. So if I'm playing this, and we can see that a drop is coming up, and we can kind of get an idea of the energy at different sections, and it'll overlay the beat grids so that they're lined up. Phoenix BT, thank you for the Twitch Prime subscription. Appreciate it. Okay, let's continue on. Again, sorry, I'm not going to be answering any questions immediately. I might answer it in the course of doing all of this, so keep that in mind. In addition to having these A and B layers, we also have a master layer. Master layer is interesting. Some people only use master layer. Some people only use A and B. But the only thing that I've been using master layer for is programming offline if I don't have a CDJ and I want to test things with Showkontrol. So for example, our master layer can only be assigned to another deck that has, oh my goodness. Did they change this? Let me see. Like I said, I don't use master layer, so maybe things have changed in the recent update. And I look like a fool. So master layer is a little unique in that you can either slave it to an existing A or B audio layer, and then you can translate it over in MTC out. So master layer is the only layer that will allow you to output MIDI timecode. The other layers are only audio. So A and B are audio, and then master layer SMPTE out will only ever output as MTC. But if you think about it, if you're already playing A or B, the audio is also going to be coming out of A. So you can use that. You can use master layer. I tend to not. I stick to only using A and B. But it doesn't matter if master layer is assigned. It doesn't really affect you in any way. But typically, I'll have a setup where deck 2 is on layer A, and deck 3 is on B. But you can change this with ArtNet. So you can control Showkontrol and control where those A and B and M layer assignments are using MA. So for example, you can use macros to determine which track is coming in next and which deck is coming in next, and then assign layers that way. Okay. So we'll go back to the set list. Again, this is where you add tracks using a CDJ, which is kind of an annoying thing that you have to do. There's not really any good offline way of importing playlists. You kind of just have to go one by one with a CDJ and add the tracks. So we've got deck 2 queued up, and we can scroll through all of our songs here. These are just some random ones from my royalty-free music library. And if we're on a track, we can add a track by clicking and hitting add track. And when we add it, it defaults to a 0-0 offset, which is no different than if we were just to play the song by default. So even if this track does not exist in the set list, and we're in live view, it's still going to translate the audio in a one-to-one fashion. So you see the SMPTE is matching up exactly with the track position. If I turn, oh yeah, you can see time mode. So you can see the elapsed time on each track, and it is translating directly to hours, minutes, seconds of SMPTE. But that's not really useful for time coding a show with a lot of tracks. So we want to go in here, again, click on the little title bar above whichever deck we want to add, and hit add track. Then from here, we can go in and here's a way that you can actually listen to all these files offline if you do a local track audio file path. The CDJs are not sharing the actual audio files with Showkontrol. It's just sharing that waveform, the beat grid information, and all the metadata, right? It's not actually sending an audio stream over to Showkontrol. That would be cool, but it doesn't happen. However, you can still copy all of the same files from like your DJ's flash drive onto your local drive, and then point that directory, point that file path into that directory, and then you can click around in here and play the audio internally in Showkontrol. And then in here, this is where you would be adding your offsets. This is the number that you're going to be changing the most. So if this is the first track in the set, I'll offset it to 10 minutes. And now we can see that it has the offset in our set list, and in the live view, we can see that we have our 10-minute offset here as well. Now there is a quick little thing that I want to talk about. You see these plus, minus buttons below each layer here? This is between the layers. So let me explain like that, like this. It is a global offset for each layer's output. So if I were, even though this offset is at 10 minutes exactly, okay, let's say we get into a situation in a venue where I want to delay everything externally. Outside of MA, you can delay inside of MA, but if everything's offset and time aligned to the same time, like you would have to do it in MA, and then you'd have to do it in Resolume. You'd have to do it in every piece of software that is listening to that SMPTE. So if you can just do it in, if you can just do it in Showkontrol from the beginning, save you some time. So you can adjust by the number of frames. So for example, it'll be a little more obvious if I do like minus on minutes. Let me see here. So you can add 1 minute to the offset, which would be an insane delay. Actually, who can figure out what's 1 minute at the speed of sound? That'd be a very long front of house. But usually you'll be talking on the orders of frames. So if I pause here, a typical adjustment will be somewhere in the realm of like 4 frames. And that means that everything in Showkontrol is going to be shifted in your view, the way you see all these beat grids, the way you see all the waveforms, and the way that the SMPTE is translated is going to be offset by that amount. So I don't know if you've ever experienced this, but if you're watching the grids on Showkontrol, and the delay is so much that you can see the like almost third of a second difference between when the audio hits your ears and when you see the actual beat grid hit. That's where you adjust that. But don't ever forget the reset here. If you want to adjust offsets per song, then you have to do that in the set list. But the layer adjustment is a global adjustment for A and B. And then of course you would do it for both of these. And you might not have the same delay between the two of them. So for example, I'm using a MIDI timecode translator. I might need to offset that at a different rate than the straight SMPTE that goes into the desk. 20 kilometer front of house, 20.5 kilometers. Wow, you guys did the math. It's incredible. That's amazing. How long have we been streaming? Only 30 minutes? Okay, we're cruising through this. All right, I like this. I like having like a very exact thing to talk about. Okay, so now we've got the offset. The offset being where exactly the song exists in a stripe of SMPTE. We've got our set list, and if we add another song to that, we'll just add a couple here. So I'm just clicking next on the CDJ, next track, adding them. And these are like my my royalty-free music that I use in vlogs, if you're curious, so that I can play this, play them on stream and not get, oh, it looks like I missed one here. So I entered in an empty one. I could just go ahead and delete that. And we can go in here and assign offsets. Now these offsets are, like I said, unique to every track in the set, but they're not random, okay? So typically you'll be talking with your production crew and anybody else who is time coding either visuals or doing something like creating the Ableton Live set, and you'll be communicating with them to make sure that you guys are on the same page as far as which offset is for which song. Because if you transpose them, you can really screw up a show. Especially because I'm using MA to trigger clips in Resolume. If I screw up these numbers, then the wrong song will fire, and that would not be good. I'm going to fire up the second CDJ here. Give it a second to boot up. I love that you guys went and figured out how long the delay is. That's great. Okay, so now I have CDJ number 2 booted up. It is not connected to the network. Let me go plug it in. I was what was I doing yesterday that made it so that I disconnected these? Oh yeah, we were testing a new method of live streaming, and I went and set up all my gear in the living room, and then streamed over the internet to my virtual front of house over here. Okay, so CDJ player number 3 is being booted up. It's connected to the network now, and we should see it momentarily. Yep, okay, I see it. And I'm going to load the same track. Playlist. Oh wait, that's our first track. Go back to number 1 here. Track 1. Okay, so we can play the same track on 2 different layers at the same time. So I'm going to play the first one first, play the second one second. Even though these are the same track, Showkontrol is unique in that you can have independent layers like this and have them output for the same track on different layers at the same time. I'm going to go ahead and also at this time add in our net dongle, just because I'm getting annoyed that I can't see the feedback that I made. Good feedback, you know. Come on. All right, I gotta go over here again. Sorry. Professional streamer. Pro streamer. Oh, here it is. It's tucked away. Made the cabling too tidy. It's a rarity. All right. Okay. So proof of concept there. This means that obviously I can then have 2 different tracks playing at the same time, A and B. So deck 2 is outputting on layer A, but we could swap this, right? Remember? I could have deck 2 outputting on both of these and have A outputting on this other one, which actually went and started triggering during a different timecode show, because I overlapped them, and this is a different show file that I've been working on. Is this a sponsored Showkontrol stream? Because I'm going to get it now for my venues. No, this is not sponsored. I don't have any sponsored videos or anything like that. Anyways, so this is a good example because in the MA show file that I have, we were programming this time-coded show for a Zomboy track a couple days ago, and it's almost done. But this is totally the wrong song. So if I were to show you this, although it does actually kind of match, but it's not the right track. Okay. So the way we avoid that is by having unique identifiers for every offset, right? So 10 minutes for the first song, 20 minutes for the second song. They're all offset that way so that we don't get issues like that, which I wasn't planning on showing you this, but this is a perfect example of why you would want to make sure you do that. This is just the demo show that I'm working on, so it doesn't really matter. Okay. So we've stopped our timecode input here. Stop playing both decks. Actually, I think I was showing you the wrong one because I assigned them on different layers. But no matter. The one thing to note, though, is that you can only have each layer, obviously, maybe this isn't obvious, but you can only have A assigned to one deck at a time. Because then otherwise you would have two SMPTE layers on the same output channel, and that wouldn't make any sense, right? Anthony Jacobs Music, Crew, Electrical 82, The Racing Lion, Titan Tank, Nate, Pixel Plays 2016. Thank you guys all for the follow over on twitch.tv. We've been getting a lot of people over on Twitch. It's kind of cool. It's nice because it's a little higher quality too. Okay. We're getting there. So now we have this set list of different tracks, and it doesn't matter which is loaded on which. As soon as I hit play, in MA, it recognizes that timecode slot A, timecode slot 1, is assigned to layer A here, and it has immediately started listening. And it knows that, okay, this is in song 3. This is all set up this way because I have time-coded these show automation timecode pool items so that the settings are set so that no matter what, if on timecode slot A I start hearing SMPTE, it's going to say, oh, Matt, okay, we're playing SMPTE, it's go time. I need to determine what song this layer, or which song this timecode slot belongs to. And at this point, since we're playing this track that has a 30-minute offset, that would be track number 3 in my pool of songs here. So just because I started playing SMPTE through Showkontrol, all I did was load the track in the CDJ and hit play. It knows. Let me zoom in a little bit here. It knows that song 3, even though I have nothing stored here, it knows that song 3 is now on A. If I were to go over to Showkontrol once again, and let's just load another track. Pick another one. We'll go for the 1 hour offset. And if I were to hit play now, MA knows that we're at the 60-minute or 1 hour offset, and it pops over to song 6. And at the same time, it switches my fader page to 6 and switches my selected executor to song number 6. Gold Gub gifted a tier 1 sub. Oh, 2 tier 1 subs. How many tier 1 subs did you just gift? What? Thank you for, wow, 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 wow. Whoa, how many? Gifting 5 tier 1 subs to the community. That's cool. Thank you. That's awesome. Huge support. Mind sending me a friend request on Discord? Yeah, I mean, I don't really use Discord. I'm never on there. Like, I'm pretty busy doing emails. Like, email is the best way to get a hold of me. Wow, YouTube is like a minute behind from Twitch. Yeah, that's what I've experienced as well. Kind of strange. So again, and I'm going to show you this time on, I wish I had a screen set up for this. Actually, let me make a screen in OBS real quick just to show you, or maybe here's what I can do. I can add a scene, right? I can add a scene. So I'm going to add my screen 2 scene. Boom, wow. OBS master. OBS master, for sure. Hopefully this is like somewhat visible. Oh. Screw it, I'm just gonna make it, I'm gonna cover it up so you can see what's going on. Foxtrot Oscar with the Prime sub, thank you. Karate Pajamas subscribed for 1 month at tier 2. What is tier 2? God. You guys are crazy. I appreciate it though. So let's go back to this whole concept here. So if I have song 6 playing here, which is this one, and I pause it, or I can just load a new track, it doesn't really matter. I'll load it, let's see, we'll load a song that has an offset of 40 minutes. If I hit play, my play button's kind of screwed up. Oh, is it not showing up on... Oh, wait. You guys can't see, can you see what's going on? Sorry, I'm kind of confused why it's not showing the right, hang on one second. This is not the right, no, it is, I'm just dumb. Let me fix this. Properties, no properties available. I totally imported the wrong screen scene. Supposed to import screen 3, which is this one, which makes a little more sense in context for what we're doing here, right? I think this is all you really need to see. Okay, so let's do that again. I'll cue the track, which restarts it, essentially. And I'm actually going to go in here and turn my Telnet off and on again. Network, Telnet, disable, enable. Cool, now we're logged in and good to go. So if I select track number, let's go back to 1. This one. If I hit play, now of course it's not working. Hang on, let me see here. Show automation 2. Song 2. Oh, I see why. Back when I was programming these earlier, there's a couple different settings that I change while I'm programming in my timecode pool to make it so it doesn't hop around and I can leave record on. So timecode slot A, this whole show automation list, is listening for any SMPTE that it's getting. If I go to like a ridiculous offset. I'm just going to add like a 7-hour offset, and I'll do like 4-hour, because I think that still exists in my... Yeah, so if we do a 4-hour offset and I hit play, it'll immediately hop to the track in my timecode pool that has a 4-hour offset, which appears to be song 24. That would make sense. 60 minutes in an hour, that's 6 different chunks, so the 4-hour mark would be at song 24. That makes sense. And we can see our fader screen down here, and our button, or our fader page and our button page have hopped over to the page for song 24. Each song has its own page, it has its own pool item, and its own macro and exec. Johnny B126, thanks for the Prime subscription over on Twitch. Greetings from Austria. Hey, how's it going? This is not the Timecode live stream. This is the Showkontrol live stream, where I talk a little bit about how I have this all set up. So meanwhile, while all of this is happening, there is also a separate executor full of clips for Resolume to fire. So if I load a track that has an offset of, well, this one's 1 hour and 10 minutes. If I hit play on here, this clips controller executor goes to clip number 7 in Resolume. And we can see we've got first clip, second clip, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh. Okay, and it has fired that clip, and we can see that it is running. And if I were to assign inside of that timecode rack, remember we put that iConnectivity box. Does Showkontrol work by itself, or do you need CDJs? It can work by itself. It's not a great solution, honestly. It's kind of annoying to set it up that way, but you can. You can also import libraries, but it imports the whole library, which is not super useful. Sampling rate 44.1. And then I'll just assign my inputs. And so now you can see Showkontrol is listening to the wrong side. Why is it listening to that side? Did I plug these in backwards maybe back here? I might have done it that way. I probably just plugged them in left and right incorrectly on the interface back there. Let me just swap them here. Okay. So Clips A has triggered Resolume to fire this particular clip. And now if I go over into MA and I increase, let me just show you here on a little more detail. So if I grab video timecode A, it's just a group for my one little layer here, and I start to increase the dimmer, which you can see on our virtual stage, we can see our timecode test pattern come up. So I'm just dimming this up and down. Do I need CDJ 2000s, or can this work with 350, etc. as well? No, you need 2000 Nexus 2s for Showkontrol. There are some other timecode pieces of software that you can use with Nexuses, but those are like those programs aren't like officially sanctioned by Pioneer, not really officially supported, but I've used them before and it's been fine. Back when we toured with regular Nexuses on the old Zomboy tour, I think that was the first one. We didn't actually timecode the show, but I tried it out on a couple of like intros and stuff, and it worked pretty well. Okay, so the way that looks over in Resolume is when I roll that dimmer wheel up and down, I have opacity control over that layer. Pretty cool. So our timecode has stopped and our clip is no longer playing. So I'm going to go back and hit play again. Oh, the play button on this CDJ is kind of crap. I need to fix it. Maybe that'll be for another stream. We'll do that and actually fix the CDJ. So you can see here in Resolume, it has fired the appropriate clip, and this is controlled from MA. So the MA has a cue list in it. Whoops, excuse me, wrong screen. The MA has this sequence in it. Sorry, I use cue list and sequence kind of interchangeably. I know it's not good. Okay, I need to actually figure out how I screwed this up, because A and B is outputting over there, and then I think I must have screwed this up on the front panel. Let me see. I need to fix something on the rack real quick. I think I swapped A and B. So just A is playing for now. Yeah, I swapped them on the panel. I am smart. Okay, now they're swapped. A is in the correct slot. Mission accomplished. So we've got A here on timecode slot 1. And then over in Resolume, switch these back to their default settings. There, now we got SMPTE on the left side for A, and then SMPTE2 is the right side. Cool. So that means that at any given time, I can have one track playing on A that has a different offset than B. So right now, I have, I'll show you. Sorry, this gets complex, okay? So in our timecode view on MA, I have these clip automations, A and B. So this one is listening to timecode slot 1. This one's listening to timecode slot 2. You can see the number at the top, 1 and 2. And all this is doing is firing this clips B sequence, which exists here. And the only thing that is stored in this cue list is the cues for Resolume. Does that make sense? So if I were to go back one track on the left side, it's going to recognize that I've loaded song number 6, and it will go to the 6th clip in my timecode clips automatically. Then from there I can fade it in and out using the programming for the actual track. And if I have something playing on B, which I do, Clip 4 fires on B. And now if I fade that one up, I can fade between them. And they can be overlaid. I have them mixed like this so that when actual content is filled in here, when actual content fills in here, it mixes together using the 50 add mix mode. So you can have the DJ moving their faders up and down, and that will respond to this, or this will respond to that. So you can have two different. My volume level is changing on certain scenes. Oh, that might make sense. Hang on, let me look. Hey. Oh, I see what's going on. It's because of this external mic that I have. I think I got rid of it on a couple of scenes. Yeah. Okay. I'll work on that for the next stream. I don't really want to mess around with it too much. But this one should... No, this one should have the same volume level. I don't know. I'll take a look at it. I'll take a look at it after the stream so we can continue talking about this. So we've got our two timecode tracks running simultaneously, and Resolume sees both of them. Should, if I hit... Yeah, that's playing, that's playing. Oh, yeah, and if you load a track, here's the other thing that I've set up. So if you load a track that has no offset in it, it will not fire a timecode clip, because in Resolume, I leave this first section open, because that is the default for the DMX. All right, it's been 1 hour officially. You know what time it is? That's right, it's Water Gang time. Thank you for the reminders. All right, I actually, maybe we should do a little countdown. I wonder if someone could make a little, like, 5-minute countdown that I can put up on the screen. And I'll have to work with OBS in that. I think that it might be possible. All right, yeah, it's water time. Hope you guys out there have your water as well. I do this because I forget that I have to drink water sometimes when I'm doing these long streams. Okay. I got liquor, I'm a rebel. Nice. What's our Twitch viewership at? Did we ever hit 100 in here today? I don't think so. That's like the only next big milestone for Twitch. I think it's the only thing I have to surpass to get to the next level. Oh well. Okay. Is everybody kind of with us so far? So deck 2 is on layer A, deck 3 is on layer B. And those layers are going into MA and sending values to Resolume to indicate which clip is firing on either layer A or B. So this clips A, which I wish I could... Do you see that? Do you see me tapping? No, you can't. I guess that's only on my side. So clips A, that's just a cue list. Oh, here's a good question. Rafaela, how do you merge ArtNet of the Resolume videos in MA fixtures without spending parameters? Are you asking about how I'm able to control Resolume without spending parameters, because you have to use parameters to control Resolume. There's no real way around that. If you want to be able to timecode Resolume in MA, you need to have parameter control. But we'll talk a little bit about this other feature that I have in this Resolume file. Oh yeah, here's a good. Okay, we'll talk a little bit about Telnet now. So Coco asks, is it possible to send BPM from Showkontrol to MA2 effects for timing? Yes. Yeah, or you could do complex MIDI mapping from MA2 to Resolume. Yeah, that would. I don't know. Can you do that actually? I'm not even sure. Anyways, let's talk about that BPM question. Because yes, you can. So we'll switch over just to layer A for now. And we'll play, I don't know, this fourth track, whatever. On MA, if I go, oops. If I go to page, I think I have it set up on my console as page 51. Or no, it must be 50. So on page 50, I have reserved these faders for control from Showkontrol. Okay, so you can see we have our various player numbers as speedmasters. Okay, so this first guy here, see me tapping and highlighting it, which by the way is did you know that these faders are capacitive? Like I'm just clicking, I'm barely touching the fader and it lights up, so you can see in the dark without moving the fader which fader you're touching. Anyways, so this is my Speedmaster for player 1. I can move it wherever right now, doesn't really matter. So let's just move these all the way up. If let me make sure my Telnet's connected, because this will be kind of embarrassing if it isn't working. It should though. Yeah. So if I move in Showkontrol, I have to make another scene on the fly here. So in Showkontrol, well, let me first say this. In CDJs, if you see on deck 2 there, I have a maximum pitch range of negative 100% to positive 100%. In my deck settings, deck preferences, deck 2, I have a series of Telnet macros, or sorry, a series of Telnet commands, which you can use to fire macros, or you could just write in commands in them. Every time that these actions are done on this deck, that correlating command will fire. So for example, the BPM change, I have this command which says telnet out Speedmaster 3 points, and then it looks for the number or the name player 2 at BPM val. And this is a variable within Showkontrol. So this %% BPM val means that it's going to suck whatever the current value of the BPM is in a whole number and translate that to that variable. And then that variable gets put into an actual number and goes down the command. So if I pull up, for example, this will actually be a fun way to show this. I'm going to clear out this screen and we'll put a system monitor in here. Now as I move this fader, this pitch fader, like I'm literally just moving the pitch fader up and down like this. Oh, let's go to Showkontrol screen. Every time that changes, it will move my Speedmaster for player 2. And I have it set up the same way for player 3. So that is how you can link effects to the proper, speed per deck. The only thing I'm missing right now that I haven't finished doing yet, because I haven't figured out a perfect solution, is how to, and that's what these two Speedmasters at the tail end are for. The BPM is always linked to the sound input on the back of the desk, which I think, if I configured this correctly... No, so I've changed my setup a little bit since the last time I ran through all of this. You can use that sound input on the back to create a sound reactive BPM master, which is useful for some things. Goldgup asking, what if the fader isn't moved and a new track is loaded? Good question. Let me show you. If the fader isn't moved and a new track is loaded, the way I have it set up is that it will automatically update the Speedmaster. Anytime there's any sort of change, it updates it. So we'll watch on player 2 here. Remember, that's this guy here. When I load the new track, it automatically just goes to the new BPM. Pretty cool, right? So there's apparently, I've done a little research. This is going to be my my first Lua project, is figuring out a way to copy each of these. So if I've switched over to song 2, but here's the thing. If your DJ is mixing and all the beat grids are set properly, the outgoing track and the incoming track are going to have the same BPM, right? So your effects, you don't need to worry too much about copying the Speedmaster value, as long what time you do that. But that's what I'm working on. That's my first Lua project that I've wanted to do on my own, because I've never delved into Lua too much. But with all the learning Vectorworks and streaming, it's been pretty difficult to find time for Lua specifically. But this is the one thing where I think it's probably pretty easy to do in Lua, and I'll probably figure that out later tonight after we get off the stream and I go outside and get some of that beautiful sunlight. So all of my effects in the whole show file, with some exceptions, stuff where I don't want it to be a slave to any effect and just have a solid hertz value, everything else is slaved to this Speedmaster 1 here. So the goal is to timecode a command to copy player 2's value to Speedmaster 1. Your average 8-year-old says, I will never own CDJs or ever buy Showkontrol, but Christian somehow would make it interesting to watch paint dry. Oh, thank you. It's funny you say that, because I'm going to be replacing the fake brick look thing, whatever. I hate it. I thought it would look a lot better than it did, and after I put it up, I was like, I'll shoot a couple of videos with it. I hate it. So I'm going to be repainting that wall. Despite, hey, what's my landlord going to do about it? I live in a rented apartment, so I'll probably keep the paper up and paint over it so I can just rip it off. But yeah, I want a much nicer backdrop. Gray Gang. Shantae, thank you so much for all the discussion watching from Singapore. Well, hello. I'm glad to provide a place for y'all to hang out. Can I use the capacitive faders for inputting time? I don't think so. Maybe there's a way in Lua to grab whether or not the sensor is picking up your finger. Originally, this was for like being able to see which. Okay, no, actually, I'm wrong. I believe, I'm sure someone will correct me if I'm wrong. I think that the capacitative feature originally was to keep bass vibrations from moving faders or executors without you actually having your fingers on them. So if you had your fingers off and something moved them without having your fingers on it, then it would be totally screwed up. But I believe they got rid of that because too many people were like using gloves, or like they couldn't, it wasn't triggering at the right times. I believe that's what happened. Let me see if I have this set up. Yeah. So in addition to that, we can also track the vertical fader position. What is the name of the mic on the boom? It's a Procaster. And if you look down in the description, there should be a link to my gear list, or maybe it's just on Twitch right now. Use a variable to save a BPM and a macro to copy the BPM to the Speedmaster. Interesting. Might have to check that out. That would be cool. I would like to do it without using Lua, but that's just because I'm bad at Lua. I just don't have experience with it. How do you control video wall screens? I'm not really a video wall tech, but essentially any computer or any video output device is going to be sending a signal in a pretty like standardized, like 1080p or 4K signal, and that's a rectangular signal. But a lot of times the stages that we work on aren't rectangular, and they have like video walls in all sorts of places. So in Resolume, you can add what are called slices, and you can change how they're organized in your output transformation. So usually you'll have a slice for every single LED screen that exists in the real world at the stage you're doing, and you would have a bunch of like a big array of slices. Let me see if I have, for example here. For example here, this was our map for our Louis the Child tour. We just had 2 ground rows of LED and then an upstage wall. So when we output visuals, let's just pick a random one here. Thank goodness that Resolume is LTP. Let's see, what's a good generic one? Yeah, this is cool, whatever. And if I go back over to our advanced output, all of these slices correlate to this output, right? So this is like the actual pixel for pixel 1080p output, and each one of these slices needs to be given an area to input. So if I drag this slice over here, remember floor bottom, if I go over to output, now floor bottom is translating and scaling that composition to just this region, and then it's outputting this entire black area as well, because this is the 1920 by 1080 output size. So if you have a lot of pixels on your stage, you'll need to have enough real estate physically between the slices to not have them overlap, so they can each have their own independent region on the output. Gear list doesn't work on Twitch. Oh no. Hang on, let me look at that real quick. Let me give that a shot. Go to channel. Okay, PC audio muted. Gear list doesn't work. Oh, you're right. It doesn't. I know why. I know why. Oh my goodness, that was so silly. Why did I do it like that? Unless I can't. Yeah, so I put the gear list in here. I think people were asking for. I'm working on the setup right now. So if you're curious in seeing computer specs, only the first tab is done right now. I'll be filling it out later. So that should go submit. And that should take you there. Maybe I need to work on my com/setup. Oh man, I totally screwed this up. Totally messed it up. Give me 1 second. And then this part, I'm going to kind of conclude the show control. If you have any specific, I think I've covered a majority of what people would be confused about with show control. I'll go a little bit through maybe the network setup page a little bit more. Was there anything that was confusing about what I said about show control? Because now we'll get into kind of the merging section where we'll talk about how we can merge different data sources. URL mapping /setup. That should work. That link should work. /setup. I'm not sure why that's not going to that Google. Oh, it is now. Okay, I fixed it. I think I forgot to put a space after an arrow. Okay, should be working now. The first lighting console, I guess technically was Chauvet. It was those red ones that they had before they came out with the Obey series, but it's basically like the first version of the Obeys. Yeah. Okay, so I'm gonna go back to my template. There. Now we can see some action. Okay. Okay, this next part is a little complicated. And I guess it makes sense to talk about merging external data if we go into our... Let's just go into our patch real quick, and I'll show you what I'm talking about. So if we go into patch, obviously this is where we patch fixtures. And inside of here I have the festival clone stage. Here's all the fixtures, but I don't know if you noticed or not, but the pixel bars, aka these blue fixtures, I don't know if you can see them here. These guys in front of the DJ booth, they take a lot of pixels. Okay. And I don't have enough parameters until my NPU gets here this next week to control all of them. So instead, to do that, I have mapped them in external software both in Resolume. Here they are laid out in a strip. And I've also done the same thing in Madrix. So if I go to my, I believe, patch editor. Sorry, I'm not really a Madrix guy. I use it for pretty basic things, to be honest. And yeah, so in here you can also see that we have the same layout. So if I want to be able to mix these together, I think there's no mic listed. It's a DPA 4188 for my headset, and then Rode Procaster. It's probably in the YouTube description. I don't think I've finished out that page yet. Sorry. I'll finish it out before the next stream. So, I need to be able to mix between MA2 values, Madrix, and Resolume, which is actually not that crazy. Okay. Like I said, I don't have these patched in the MA, but let's see if I actually have enough. Let's see if I have enough parameters to just do this real quick. So I'll do epics strip. And I believe that it has. I'll do this. I'll prove this example without patching a fixture, because if I patch it, then I will lose parameters, and I'm pretty maxed out on this stage. I don't know if you guys have seen, but on this stage, I have like 5,697 parameters patched. But it's still, it works for the most part. Yeah, the boom mic, which is, I'm not using the boom mic right now, but so like this is the boom mic, and this is the headset. I'm gonna go turn off Nightbot's caps real quick. 1 second. Commands. Let's see, where is it? Spam protection. Okay. I have disabled excess caps. So feel free to, scream away, I guess. Stop spamming words and phrases. All right, I'm just going to turn off Nightbot. You guys are fine. You haven't done anything. How can I just... Is there any way to just, like, actually turn him off completely for the moment? Okay, I disabled him. You guys can post links and stuff now. I disabled him. Nightbot's off. Ban Nightbot. I think I just unmod him, right? That would be the best. Okay, should be good. So let's start from the top here, right? If I go over into capture, we have these fixtures. And remember, capture is more like a real world representation of what I need to... What I'm trying to say is I can set things up in capture to mimic the real world, versus if I just patch them in MA, they'll just like always work no matter where I put them or anything. They'll just kind of always work. So the whole plan here is to patch these appropriately. And if I go to my first strip here, and actually I think if I go to properties of selected items, you can see that we are starting on universe 14, address 1. And we can only fit 3 of these per universe. So blocks of 3 per universe. If I go into my universes tab, starting at universe 14, I'm outputting, or I'm patching it to an ArtNet input. Everything else is on MANet. So 14, 15, all the way to universe 21 uses up 8 ArtNet universes. 8 ArtNet universes. So to confirm that I have control over those through ArtNet, through MA, let's see which ArtNet universes those were. Double check. Universe 0, subnet 0, net 0. So the first ArtNet universe. It means if I go into my DMX tester, so if I hold down channel, oh my goodness. If I hold down channel, or sorry, press it twice. Wow. Wow, that's the first time I've messed that up. So press it twice, channel. We pull up the DMX tester. So we don't know what MA universe this is, but we could patch it to pretty much anything, right? So if I go into my ArtNet tab, you can see that I have an output starting at universe 1, but that's outputting on subnet 5. I want something that is outputting on subnet 0 and starting at universe 0, which is coincidentally in this previs line. So if I want to output those pixels using the DMX tester, I need to output on MA universe 131. So if I type in 131 into our universe, and this is because the DMX tester does not take up parameters, right? So now I can see, I don't know if you can see that in capture, but I'm actually scrolling through. See that? I'll have to zoom in a little bit. Scrolling through that universe. Right? So I'm just taking all of the values from 0 to 255. I'm scrolling through the addresses. So since this is a series of RGB strips, we'll see flashing RGB. Cool. So we've confirmed that that works correctly from a value standpoint in MA. So I can send values out of MA on that universe and they will go to this destination. All right. Now, let's hop back over into Resolume. Resolume Arena. Wait, should we listen to that? Who wants to hear Resolume Arena through the stream? Anybody want to hear a good old classic Resolume Arena, like the real one? Let's hear it. Okay, of course. 1 second. Resolume Arena. Are you ready? Is everybody ready? Are you ready? Resolume Arena. It never gets old. Okay. I think I need to keep that on a yeah, by the way, that's the version on my desktop. So that's this guy. I literally just used the desktop Resolume Arena to do that meme. Anyway, so I tend to use something a little more pattern-y to test output in Resolume. If I was smart about this, and this is the way I did it on stage in that vlog that I did a couple of weeks ago, I just crawl on stage with a white bar that just wipes left to right and then top to bottom. But I don't have that in here right now. So, back to our advanced output screen. We have our pixels here. And I've imported these by, let me recreate this last Lumiverse here. Or no, let's recreate the first one. So I could just copy them, right? Actually, no, I'm going to cancel this. I'm going to recreate number 8, just so it doesn't screw up the numbering. So I'm going to delete Lumiverse 8, and we'll pretend that none of these exist in here. We'll pretend that Lumiverse 1 through 7 are just kind of chilling and not doing anything. I need to add a DMX Lumiverse to our output. And whoa, very large. So you can scale it appropriately. This fixture imported because I have it set as the fixture I was using immediately before. But you can go in here and select any other sort of fixture that you may have used in the past. So we've used the Pixelicious before. And it just basically creates a 2D representation of the pixels, and it shows what each individual pixel is averaged to on your composition. So you could technically create a one fixture pixel map of a DMX fixture that averages the entire composition. So if this was just an RGB cell, let me just go in here and add a new RGB that's literally just one pixel. Close it out. This fixture is now averaging the entire center of that pixel, right? So every time it crosses, boom, it's going to take that average from the center of wherever you're placing this, which is useful for some other stuff, but not exactly our example. So I'm going to delete that. Can I not just delete this, really? Okay. I'm going to add DMX Lumiverse again. A Lumiverse is one universe. You can't have multiple, you can't have more than one universe worth of pixels in a single Lumiverse, which is kind of annoying. But I can change where this Lumiverse is outputting to broadcast, and then choose which subnet and universe. But remember that our ArtNet in capture was set to subnet 0, universe 0. And we can change our frame rate to 40 and our delay to 0 milliseconds. And here's our fixture. It's just chilling here in the middle. So if this is just an RGB fixture, and I'm going to release our DMX values here. I'm going to swap him over to our epoch strip. Okay. And again, resize him appropriately. somewhere into this size. And his starting address will be 1. And you can kind of see a preview over here in the fixture window. So let's see if we're getting that as an input in ArtNet land, which technically, since I'm using MANet, or I'm using MA to output the ArtNet, I need to first get, let me see how I did this over here. Okay, I see what I had to do. So since you can't have multiple overlapping universes between MA and Resolume for outputting ArtNet into Capture, what you have to do is create a different virtual universe that doesn't actually output to anything. So over in MA, screen 2, you can see I have this line called Resolume input, which is patched starting at subnet 6 universe 0. And it's inputting to, hey, you guessed it, that same universe 131. Wow, so like if you have a situation where you have like 60 epoch strips, isn't there a quicker way to make sure everything is resized and positioned where it should be? Not really. I mean, you can grab them all and resize them, but if they're all messed up, then you need to redo it all. There's no quick way to do it, unfortunately. It's a bummer, but that's just how it is. So instead of remaking this, because I'm just going to show you guys. So I'm going to cancel out here. And this is the composition, the output. So epoch strip 1 is in Lumiverse 1, set to address. Oh, sorry. I didn't show you. Okay, so we see epoch strip 1 set to address 1 in Lumiverse 1. That entire Lumiverse is patched, if you notice over here in the Lumiverse window, which you can rename, starting at subnet 6 and universe 0. Since we can fit three epoch strips within a single universe, because it taps out at 450, these first three, keep changing this. These first three will be broadcast on subnet 6 universe 0, like I said. So that goes into this ArtNet input, subnet 6 universe 0. And it's being input to MA universe 131. So if I were to pull up a DMX sheet and go to universe 131, all the way down here. We will not see anything yet, and there's a very good reason for that. Because I want to be able to control from the MA when Resolume is outputting. I don't want the epoch strips to always be just doing whatever the composition's doing, right? I want to be able to choose whether or not it's following along with the video. So to do that, what I've done is I have a set of video controls set up so that I can choose whether or not the DMX output of Resolume is going on. So these are just dimmers, okay? They're faders that I've mapped inside of Resolume. And if I go over to Resolume, in my layers, I have 2 layers for these DMX routers, or sorry, these video routers. What is it actually called in here? Is it just called router? Root router? Video router. So I dragged in a video router source, and you can assign which inputs they listen to. You can have it listen to a specific layer for input, or you can have it just do all of the layers below it. So this DMX out 1 controls whether or not those pixels will take the data from Resolume and then output those into the real world, because MA is controlling what the value of this fader is. So if I go over to MA, this fader that I've DMX mapped to capture is just a dimmer, right? So if I bring it up and then we hop over, we can see that depending on how much I dim it, it's going to allow opacity for the Resolume composition. Noah the Light, thank you for the Twitch Prime subscription. Killing it. Gotta get rid of this Resolume Arena. Hopefully I don't blast your ears. I'm pretty sure I turned it off before I muted the PC before it started looping. We'll see. I'm sure you guys will let me know. Okay, so now we've got Resolume into capture via an MA ArtNet merge-ish. It's taking it as an input and then rerouting it on a different output, a different universe. So Resolume is on like subnet 6, and that is sending universes 0 through 7 for a total of 8 universes. It's being patched into MA universe 131, and then universe 131 in MA is being sent out on a different subnet in universe 0, 0. And then capture is listening to that. So capture only knows about subnet 0, universe 0. So from here, we can just double check, remember with our DMX tester, and make sure that we still have values that we can send. Test output 255. And we can see, as I roll through these values, even though they're not patched in MA, this proves that I have control over those universes. So if I did patch fixtures there and I had enough parameters, which NPU gets here in a week or so, I would have the ability to fade between those values or fade between what Resolume is sending. Let's go one step further, or maybe a few steps further. That next step, Madrix. This is kind of the same story. Over in MA, I have Madrix layers that I can control. And if I set that to full, I can then use my gobo wheel to select any of my main clips here. And I can set this to, since I have it set to white, over in MA, I can open up good old color picker. Let's just move it to red to show some contrast here. And over in Madrix, it looks like this, right? But in Capture, since we're able to mix between these two and it's merging with HTP, or highest takes precedence, over in Capture it looks like this. And I can now independently control the speed of Madrix separately, and I can even go backwards in Madrix, separately from everything that's happening in Resolume or MA. Why did I make input and output by MA? It's so that I can control everything with the MA, because it's time-coded. All the time code in the MA means that I can automate the fader levels of Madrix. I can automate the fader levels of Resolume. I can automate all of the values coming out of the MA as well, because I can patch these as fixtures in the MA. Hope that makes sense. Ever have a PC just shit the bed with all this stuff running during the show? Only once, and it was during a changeover, and we had to restart the computer. But for the most part, like the show computers that I use, they stay off the internet for the most part, and I don't use them for anything except for show stuff. And I test it all pretty thoroughly. The only time recently where we had some weird stuff going on was I recently got a new computer and loaded all the stuff on it, this Razer, and this was at EDC Mexico. When we went to do our changeover, thankfully we had a decent, when we went to do our programming session, Scott, our front of house engineer, also sends a camera composition. I don't know if you noticed that, but in Resolume at the top here, I have a camera layer, and this is an NDI camera source. But for some reason, when he would connect his computer that was running NDI 3 to my computer that was running NDI 4, then sorry, I'm just reading the Twitch chat. It's stupid. So that was causing Resolume to crash on my computer. And sometimes, like, if a crash happens and you're looking at it and nothing was happening, you weren't doing anything, and it just crashes, you kind of sit there and you're like, was this just like a fluke? So we tried it again, and about 5 minutes later, it crashed again. So at that point, I was like, look, I'm like 99% sure this is the NDI feed. So we unplugged the NDI feed, restarted the computers, and with nothing else connected, no MA running, no show cockpit, nothing, just plugged in his computer to mine with a new network cable as well. As soon as we started outputting NDI, it crashed. So then we just said, well, we can't use NDI on this show for our camera capture. And it turns out there weren't even cameras anyways. So that's been the only recent crazy thing. So let's talk about how we got that Madrix data into here. Yeah, it was probably the version difference. So in Madrix, the patching is much the same as what we were talking about in Resolume. So we have all of these individual fixtures, strips of, what are these, 50 pixels tall, and each one of these is assigned a DMX universe, and I start in Madrix at universe number 2 for all my patching. The reason is maybe this is just my lack of knowledge on Madrix. I'm not an expert in it, but for some reason I think you can only patch your DMX remote, which in my case is the console. So this is my DMX remote for Madrix. I'm pretty sure you can only patch that to universe number 1 in Madrix. So I start everything at universe number 2, and then I just count up from there, and it's the same story. So Madrix has its own internal universes, just like MA does. So all this universe 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, those are all, that only matters in Madrix. These could be any numbers. Okay? Those numbers just straight up don't matter. As long as they're not 1, apparently. I don't know. Maybe something's different, or I'm misconceiving that, but I'm pretty sure you can only input the remote to 1. Anyways, so we have these patched to our Madrix universes in the patch editor. And then in our device manager, we have a series of ACN, streaming ACN outputs that I have patched. Remember Universe 131? The one in MA? Well, I also have that over here in Madrix. You can see that universe number 2, see how it says, this tab says universe? Of course, why did I click on that? So universe number 2 in Madrix is set as an output. And that universe 2 is patched to ACN universe 131. Okay? So let's go back over into MA. Setup button, network protocols. Go to the ACN tab. How about that? And wouldn't you know it? In here, if we look at, and this part's a little confusing. This isn't super clear, but I just did this so it made sense in my head when I did it at the time. These are all of the inputs, and maybe I can do this as an input unicast. I think if you do it that way, yeah, but I didn't want to do it unicast. So I wanted to do it multicast. And here is our list of Madrix universes in the ACN universe number. It just happens to be the same as local start because that's where I want to merge them. But I'm listening to ACN universes 131 through 144, which is what we have going over in here. So 131, 132, so on and so forth. This ID number you see on the left is just the name of the ACN node that Madrix creates. Okay. So that's being output through ACN and going into MA via ACN, obviously, I just said that. And it is being merged into these universes. So this universe 131 has a bunch of HTTP merging going on. Okay? And we just saw that in our DMX sheet. Before I forget, I'm going to clear out DMX tester. So if I scroll through this DMX sheet, we can see starting at universe 131, right here, we're starting to get the sparkly magic, which doesn't make sense to us humans to look at. But when you look at it in Capture, it makes sense. Thank you for the bits, your average 8-year-old. What does that first mean? Does that mean you're the first subscriber? Or wait, what is first? Oh, it means you're in first on the Twitch dashboard or whatever, right? Founder, 1 month subscriber. Sick. It's so cool. I never thought I'd have people on Twitch interested in 1 month sub. Wow. Welcome back. Yeah, so you can see and if you look a little more closely at this universe tab, you can kind of see what's going on. And you can even kind of identify which is which, right? Because I know that Madrix, or sorry, I know that Resolume is sending pretty much these sweeping white-ish lines. So if I look over in MA, you can kind of see where those lines are coming from. Like, let's see it right there. You know, there's a strip of white that runs through. And then those little sparkly ones that are only every third channel, those are the red from Madrix. With all the different protocols, do you have to do anything special with the network setup, like configuring a switch? Yeah, that's a pretty good question. So everything is connected to an unmanaged switch right now. I don't have a need for VLANs. I don't have a need for any of that. Simply because everything needs to talk to each other anyways on this unmanaged switch. So the unmanaged switch is connected to MA ports 1 and 2. So in the back, there are 2 Ethernet ports. And if I pull up my screen here, if I type in set IP, I can see what the IP MAC addresses and the subnet mask of each one of those are. So my console, I keep it always at 192.168.0.1 for Ethernet 0. And then I assign the IP address 2.0.0.1 and a class A subnet for Ethernet 1 for communicating with ArtNet. So that's the only way that MA will talk to ArtNet, is either through the 10 dot or the 2 dot. Wait, Water Gang already? Holy cow. I thought this was going to be a short stream. Water Gang. Thank you for the reminder. Thanks for tuning in, Joe. And Marek on YouTube asks, SACN or ArtNet? There was a big debate in the MA Lighting Facebook group earlier yesterday. Streaming ACN, in my opinion, is, in general, a much easier to set up system, and it allows you a little more control using priorities. And you can also use, I think it's what, TTL? What is that actually called? Yeah, TTL, which is a way of stopping the signal from propagating after it reaches a number of destinations. So if I only want it to make one hop, I can just type in 1, and then afterwards it will not propagate any further. So you can do like universe priorities. The only thing you can't really do as well as ArtNet is, and I don't want to say anything because I'm not 100% an expert in this, I just use them. I'm not an expert on the exact specifications, but I don't think that ACN can do RDM. I think ArtNet has a better RDM management setup. But other than that, I vastly prefer streaming ACN. The universes are easier to count. It's just an easier setup, and I think better overall. Can you answer my question too? I can't see your question. I'm sorry. How'd you get your gig with LTC? I think I met with... It's a good question, actually. I can't remember exactly. I think I got basically cold called on it. Yeah, anyone who does not stay 40 minutes after the stream is a fake fan. It's 100% true. Would you ever consider opening a full-blown production company? Yeah, that's kind of like, kind of in the 10-year plan. The plan is to like do a lot of work right now, get all these systems set up and established where I have solid show files for doing basically production design work. And then from there, you can kind of hire on people to fill in and do gigs and get more clients. And then once you get more clients, then you have more work, obviously, more income. And then from there, once you have all that disposable income, you have more leverage for buying equipment, starting bigger businesses. So I'm kind of cooling off on the production business stuff right now because obviously there's no work to be done. But I'm focusing really heavily on this right now, getting a bunch of new clients locked in, and then once I have that, then we can go from there. But probably in 8 to 10 years, maybe 6 to 10 years, I think that's when I would start like a real real production company, I guess you would say. Got to meet a lot of people first, and then have a lot of a long list of people who want to hire you to do that. It's hard to just start a production company. It's a lot of friends who hire each other for things. So that's got to be your first step. It's gonna be my step. I'm halfway there. I said I've been doing timecode lately. Do I miss busking? Honestly, timecode is way more satisfying to watch it work. Like, watch it play back. Why do I input the ArtNet signal from the Resolume in the MA if afterwards it will be output? Try to think of what exactly you're asking. Why do you input the ArtNet signal from the Resolume? I believe it's because if you have multiple outputs to the same universe in ArtNet, you'll get collisions and it won't actually output anything. Don't quote me on that, but that's how it was working in Capture. I couldn't get both of them visualized in Capture without merging them in. You need some sort of external device to determine which packet gets priority. And so that's what the MA is doing. It's serving as an HTTP merge. Was I at Ultra in 2013? No, I was not. I think I was in Montana doing some very small show, I'm sure. Or, yeah, something like that. All right. Yeah, so I think we're pretty much there on describing all of this. And then all of the controls in Madrix are mapped, like I said. So the power of this is I can grab my video busk layer and I can dim it down. Oh, whoops, that's the effects layer. Clips. So if I dim clips down, then both the video and everything else that's patched in that Lumiverse, in that composition, will dim down. Or I can have the video live and then just turn my DMX map down. And again, that is just this little fader I have up here. So you see him moving right there. That's just my DMX map. So if I fade him down, I can choose to not send values to the pixels. And then from there, go a little further and select our Madrix layer and change the color of that clip in Madrix. Just a Ben here, subscribed with Twitch Prime. Thank you. Thank you for the subscription. Thank you, Mr. Whack-A-Mole, Brownstone 257, all you guys for the follows. We're going to wrap up here pretty soon. We've had a really good stream today. Cloning tutorial, that's a great topic for next week. I think next week we'll talk about cloning that way. Should I buy your merch, Christian? You don't have to. I don't, at this time, with everybody struggling a little bit more, I have not been promoting merch at all. I don't know if you've noticed or not. I spent a lot of money making a bunch of new merch, but I haven't announced any of it. So yeah, I spent quite a few $1,000s getting a whole new system of merch set up, and then all this stuff happened, and yeah. That's all there is to it. Yeah, next day cloning and PSR tutorial. Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Good idea. On Showkontrol, is there any way of getting Showkontrol information on desk except Telnet? Not really. I guess you could use OSC, right? There's OSC out. Announced that I know how to get it to Dubai in less than 8 months. That's hilarious. Well, now I know who Goldgup is. What's up, Aiden? I think you only fit in the extra chonky sizes. I think if I used to have triples, I have a few doubles left maybe. But there is a way to sign up and let me know if you're interested in a size, and then during the next round of printing, I prioritize those sizes so that I can, you know, follow demand. Because it's kind of rough to follow demand on a small selection. How do you fade between two time-coded tracks when the DJ mixes between them? You need to choose. You need to choose at what point. So you remember, if you remember in here, these automation clips, all this is doing is triggering a macro. So in each of these cues, if I go into this timecode automation, all these cues are doing, they're triggering macros named for the song name. That's all it's doing. There's nothing else stored in this cue. So you need to decide when you want to do the transition. You can't really fade between them, unfortunately. So you need to find times where it's advantageous during blackouts or whatever to completely switch the track, like during build-ups or whatever. Like, that's really the only time you can do that. I'm working on a way to make it a little more smooth. Girlfriend stole my hoodie. I miss it. Oh no. Yeah, my girlfriend's mother loves the hoodies too. She wears it like every day. Anyways, so yeah, this show automation is just automating at what point does that song macro fire. So I hear you got an NPU. Yeah, I bought one. It's not here yet though. So we can officially double this stage. And I bought an upgrade I bought an upgraded Madrix dongle too. So now we have 32 universes of control. Pretty cool. Pretty cool. Yeah, and then those macros, all they're doing, if I go over here to my macros, go to song 4, this is all that macro is doing. So I'm automating the time at which this happens. Yeah. Cool. If you type in list var or list user var, you can get access to all of the variables. Pretty cool. Yeah, thank you for your support, Raccoon. Yeah, this is Symphony. Let me borrow your MA2. Well, actually, it's funny you mentioned the MA2. As much as I love this thing, we are maybe, fingers crossed, getting something a little newer next week. Maybe. No promises. MA2 giveaway. Yeah, next week. Like in the next 5 days. But it's not mine. It's not mine to own. It's being borrowed. So yeah, Michael Ferguson. Oh, sorry, I didn't mean to bump you there. Michael Ferguson, he works for Christie Lights. He's been supportive of the channel and everything for a while. And Christie has a bunch of gear right now in their Las Vegas shop doing nothing. And they're kind of just sitting on it. And he asked if I wanted to rent an MA3 for the foreseeable future. So we got an MA3 on the way. And I'm I'm not sure what I'm going to do with the MA2 during that same time. Maybe we'll put it on the other side of the room. But the problem is, like, I have everything set up here. Like, everything is perfectly arranged in the room. Like, oh, you can't really see from that angle. But yeah, everything's kind of perfectly set up right now. So we'll see. But we have one coming for a rental / undetermined demo. It's a light, MA3 light. And it's sponsored by Christie. Yeah, that's the problem. That's the question, Sebastian. How am I going to get screen capture out of MA3? So that's why I like using the MA2, because I can just tap out of the DVIs, and they don't need any fancy, stupid adapters, and it just works. I stole Colin's MA3. That's right. Let's see. Are there any other questions before I sign off here? I think we did most of the Showkontrol stuff, right? Was there anything I missed on Showkontrol? I can't know for certain. I'm trying to think if there's anything in particular I missed about talking about Showkontrol. Got the set list with the individual offsets, live view. Got the fader control. I guess we could talk through. Yeah, so you can see here. Oh yeah, let's talk about controlling Showkontrol with ArtNet, and then we'll we'll wrap it up. So just like with, I know I keep harping on about this, but just like everything else, I have a profile in MA for this. You want to see how complex the Showkontrol the Showkontrol fixture profile is? Oh, whoops. Fixture types. Showkontrol CJ. It's literally one attribute on 3 instances. Yeah, network settings, we'll talk about that. So there's 3 instances, and you really only have control over, oops, sorry, I'll move this down and away. We have control over layer A, layer B, and layer M. So if I grab layer A only, go to my video output attribute, see I can scroll it here, and over in Showkontrol, if I close out of the interface page here, let's launch it. You can see that if I'm at, you'll have to take my word for it, I'm at output 0 right now on layer A. So it is unassigned. If I start moving my encoder wheel up to 25%, it's now assigned to deck A, another 25%, so we're at like, or another little bit further, this is like at 45%. Goes to deck 2, and then so on and so forth, all the way up to deck 4. So really all that channel is doing is, you see on the right side of layer A, it's just determining, like, I'm just scrolling through here, that value is going up and down, and it's determining which deck is getting what. So when I have this set up so that the default values are that A is always at deck 2, and then B is always on deck 3. But then inside of, oops, inside of MA, I can also determine which, so this is just controlling, go off here. this cue list, and you can see we've got A indicated on there on the players. That is just telling me which layer I have assigned here, and you can see in my encoder bar that the output is changing. I didn't bother using presets for this because it'll never change. And then the same for B. So now I've effectively swapped them, and you can see on my monitor that that's the case. And then over in Showkontrol, B is on deck 2 and A is on deck 3. So it's basically swapped. Showkontrol replace Reaper? No, they're different different things entirely. I still use Reaper to program offline. I don't use Showkontrol for programming hardly at all. What's the advantage of running 2 timecode streams of Showkontrol when you still have to crudely choose which track you're following? It's for Resolume. And if you have 2 timecode streams running, the other advantage in MA is that you can use the Telnet commands. That's what this, so if you, I don't know if you noticed, but this whole screen right here is basically set up so that I can always know what each player's status is. I can immediately know and let the MA know if the fader is up or down, what level the fader's at, whether the track is queued, what speed it's at, and a couple other things. Let's see what else. Whether or not it is currently actively playing back timecode. So if I know that deck 2 is outputting to layer A and the fader is up and it is playing, and other decks are either fader down or paused or whatever, it becomes what is referred to in my show file as the active deck. Okay? Everything else becomes inactive. The next time that it hears an incoming layer on another deck, if the fader is down, it can still listen to the timecode and know which song is coming up, and then do some stuff in the background to make sure that the timecode doesn't fire until the fader comes up. And I can only do that if I'm listening to both timecode streams at once. So it's not so much like timecoding like cues and stuff. It's about knowing the position of the track to know which track is playing based off of the SMPTE time, and then also whether the faders are down or up, and whether the cue buttons are pressed or paused or play, whatever the status is. So once I know the conditions of all the decks, using those macros and some variables, I can determine whether or not I need to transition the queue. It's a way of cleaning it up and making it automated. Does that make sense? It gets really complex once you get into 2 streams of timecode. And you have to really have a good logic built in your show file so that you can know when to start listening on the right timecode slot. Because basically that needs to determine, you need to have your variables determine when you should be hitting play virtually through a macro on a song, right? So you need to use those variables to determine when. Sorry, I don't think I really explained it super well. Alexander Supertramp, hey, from Turkey. Hello. is this show file on Patreon too? This is the same show file, but this is the one on Patreon is from like 3 weeks ago. It doesn't have the new time code in it, but everything else, pretty much everything you see here is on the Patreon file. So you can take a look at the variables and all that. Bought an NSP and installed a small knock to a fan in it. That's awesome. Okay, I think we'll just go through. It's the same thing with layer B as well, and then layer M in the control of Showkontrol. So if I know those fader positions and I know that a track was just loaded, you can use Telnet to tell things to MA that it can't immediately figure out from receiving timecode. Right? So that includes the Q button position, the fader position, and the speed. So if you can tell MA that through Telnet, you solve the other half of the problem of when to determine. SLS Productions, hey Christian, hope you're doing safe. Thanks. You as well. We're doing fine here. Just staying at home, but I'm blessed to have all the stuff at home to play with. Can you use Showkontrol for CC to MIDI translation? No. You'll have to use BOEMS or Show Cockpit or any of the other tools for translation. Let's see, is there anything I missed in... Is there anything I missed in Showkontrol that we want to talk about? MDC out is enabled over... what would I do? The LX Max, so MIDI host, I use that to communicate MTC timecode, MIDI timecode over IP using RTP MIDI. Let's see here. Simpy mode, 30 frames. That's all good. That's all good. Audio, I'm literally just using the headphone output. Some people use UADs and Scarletts and audio cards, but I've found that if I'm at front of house with just the laptop and there's, 10 feet between me and the console, the timecode rack, I just use the 3.5mm to XLR left-right, and it works great. It may not be totally proper, but we're using pitched timecode anyways. We'll go into network here, see if there's anything. MA Telnet, this is an interesting point. So, to communicate with Telnet, I'm giving Showkontrol, first of all, a way to communicate with MA. So, MA is going into that switch, which is going into the same switch as the, it's going into the same switch as that ArtNet, and it's going into the same adapter that the MA is going into for the MANet IP that I set over here. So they don't overlap. I know that my desk's IP address is 192.168.0, the default target port, and then I use the user administrator, the default admin password, and that shows up in MA like, I'll have to show you this way. That'll show up in MA if you open a system desk status window. You can see here in the lower right area, Telnet logged in 1. If I go back over to Showkontrol and I disable Telnet, then I will no longer have the feedback for the buttons. Right? But if I re-enable it, watch, it probably won't work. This part is kind of tricky, if I'm honest. Telnet enable. Yeah, and then now the feedback works, and now I can know the status of whether or not the Q button is queued. If I hit play, if I hit Q again, and if I pause the track, it's a different status as well. Or if I load a new track, you know. What else is in network here? Here you can see your network cards. I like that they added the OSX settings shortcut here. Again, that just populates the network control of OSX. Then you can see these two are the same physical connected NIC. It's on the same NIC. And then this is the DHCP one. Okay. Then you can see them here, and you can see that down below I have these two IPs assigned here. Ableton Link, I've never used that, I'm not sure. And then ArtNet, this is where you patch the input. Remember we were controlling what layer A was assigned to? That's where you patch that. And then in MA, setup, network protocols, ArtNet, I have Resolume and Showkontrol on the same subnet universe. ArtNet output is enabled. That I don't really use that in my show. I just don't. You can use, remember the Telnet commands in the executor or the deck preferences. You can also do ArtNet output commands where you can send triggers to certain things. Same thing with if you're in a queue list, you can add queues in here and then have them fire ArtNet commands. So you'd be like ArtNet out, and then you can actually, let me see here. You can create commands so that when that queue point is reached, you can say, I want to DMX out the value 255 on universe 0 at full. And then now, whoops. And then when that queue fires, come on, did I not save it properly? DMX out at full. There we go. So now that command at 1 second and 26 frames of the song will fire that DMX output over ArtNet. You can name the queues and do whatever. And those queues are pre-existing queues that I have on the CDJ. So you can actually use Rekordbox to go and set all of your queues, name them in Rekordbox, and then come over here and use those as references for like CO2 hits, CO2 triggers, pyro triggers. Of course, you wouldn't actually be triggering pyro, but you can trigger messages and countdowns to fire them. What grinds your IT gears a bit? What did I say that's wrong? For the NIC with 2 IP addresses, are you running them on separate VLANs, or are you running 2 subnets on the same LAN? Maybe I'm too stupid to understand the question. There are no VLANs in my setup, if that answers your question. Everything has to talk to each other. There are a couple different subnet masks for NDI that I use. But no, there's not a whole lot of masking. Okay, moving on. So again, this is per song. One annoying thing about Showkontrol is that you can't actually, what am I trying to say? You cannot update files if you want to add new cues, etc. The question was about 2 IPs on the single NIC. What do I have wrong about it? I'm curious. Did I do something wrong? Wouldn't be the first time. Yeah, but you cannot update cues if your artist like adds cues in Rekordbox. You have to add a whole new copy of this song to your cue list and your set list. There's no update, which is annoying. What else in here? System info. Okay. I'm not going to go to licenses because I don't want you all to see that. Launch Showkontrol. Network. Yeah, I mean, there's not much to it. Pro DJ link, if you have everything set to auto, it should automatically pick up the DHCP from the CDJs. Talked about ArtNet output. The output looks like you can patch it to any universe subnet from the command, but the input is obviously only set to one universe and address. I'm interested in seeing what best practices would be for that, because I'm not a networking expert. I just set it up how I know it works. I'd be curious to see. I'd be very interested. So yeah, I think that's pretty much everything that I use with Showkontrol. I'm sure there's a million other things in here that you can use and do. It's really cool how oh, now they've got a history tab too, like a full playlist history. Nice. Yeah. Any other questions, or I'm going to wrap up the stream and get outside. And I've been liking just going out and driving. Like, I drove for like 30 minutes yesterday and it was awesome. You would have a single VLAN per subnet and add a NIC and OS that supports VLAN tagging. If they don't support tagging, then you would add another NIC. I guess I'm curious what exactly is the danger? I mean, not danger, but what is so bad about having a NIC with 2 IPs assigned to it, one with Class A and then the other with Class C for MA2? What license of Showkontrol? Primarily security? But I mean, if it's all on just, I don't understand. I'd be interested if you could trying to prevent the hacker people. Interesting. I mean, I'm always curious why people. I'm not a network expert, obviously. Let's be real. I know MA really well, and when other people have broader skill sets about things that are applicable. I'm always interested to hear. Yeah, it's just a LAN. It's just a switch, I guess, and then like Wi-Fi's turned off on everything. If that means anything. Then you should be fine. Yeah, I mean there's no Wi-Fi. It's closed LAN, and I have a password on my session. Yeah, we're generally making the assumption, because like here's the thing. This network is usually a switch where the DJ is, and then it runs, 100 meters to front of house at the max. Obviously, we don't go beyond that, or we add another switch to boost the signal. And then, yeah, it would have to be internal sabotage, basically. Clickbait. Did I clickbait? Uh-oh. Did I put something in the stream title that we haven't done yet? What license of Showkontrol? No, this is the live. This is the live version. You're just trying to get me to click on the license tab, aren't you? Yeah, I've definitely been to events where you see like the SSID for what is obviously someone's someone's front of house router or wireless access point, and sometimes it's not even password protected. Like sometimes it's an open network. I used to, oh my god, it's so cringy. I used to bring a separate wireless access point, and I would set it to actually, maybe is there a way to do this? Maybe you would be the person to ask this. This is so cringy thinking about it now, but I used to on tour, on the last Zomboid tour, I had an extra wireless access point, and I would just change the SSID to my Instagram handle. And so every venue, because everybody goes in there and they look for the venue Wi-Fi, and since I'm at front of house with like a gaming router, it would show up as the strongest signal, and it wasn't connected to anything. Like it was just powered on. But I wonder if there's a way to redirect someone who tries to connect to that. How would I do that? How would I redirect someone to open their browser and go to my my Instagram? Creepy white van. Yeah, that's awesome. It's free real estate. That's right. But I would use it for remote focusing during the day, so I'd plug it into the MA for programming, and then I'd walk around the venue and do my iPad focusing with this guy. Just like doot, go align all my positions, and then at the end I would just unplug it. Add a captive portal to it. Create a landing page. I think I'm going to do that for the next tour. I use an iPad Mini 4 for focusing. Alright guys, I'm going to wrap up the stream now. Thank you guys for tuning in. I hope this answered some questions. I know Showkontrol is kind of confusing to begin with, but it's really just a translator, right? That's all. Just a translator. Did you preface your SSID with a symbol so it was the first in the list? I don't think I think I used at. I just used the at symbol, so I guess technically. At space Christian Jackson. Well guys, thanks a lot. I'm gonna go grab some food, get some fresh air. You should do the same if you can. And I'll see you in the next video. See you in the next stream. We'll be here on Monday on Instagram, just for a weekly kind of catch up stream. Let everybody know what's going on. And then Tuesday we'll be back with a not timecode stream. I got to change the schedule. We have a special treat for you on Tuesday, so stay tuned for that. And I